Mixed marriages. Christians who were married to unbelievers should view their relationships as sacred. Here's Gene to explain.
They wrote to him about this. And so he writes, I command the married, not I, but the Lord. He said, I'm quoting the Lord Jesus here. A wife is not to leave her husband, because some of them got distorted here and said, okay, now I'm a Christian, and so I'm just going to leave because of who he is, and he's not a believer. Therefore, I shouldn't have sex with him because he's not a believer. So they distorted that. But if she does leave, she must remain unmarried or be reconciled to her husband, and a husband is not to leave his wife. But then he says to the rest, I, not the Lord, say, and he gives his opinion here, which I think he's speaking by the Spirit of God. He's just not quoting Jesus. He says, if any brother has an unbelieving wife, and she's willing to live with him, he must not leave her. See, some of the guys were saying, she's an unbeliever, so I'm no longer supposed to have sex with her, I'm just going to leave her. Also, if any woman has an unbelieving husband, he's willing to live with her, she must not leave her. Some of the women were saying, I'm married to an unbeliever, I'm not supposed to have sex with him, he's an unbeliever, therefore I'm going to leave him. Paul said, no, you got it all wrong. He says the unbelieving husband is sanctified by the wife, and the unbelieving wife is sanctified by the Christian husband. In other words, sex is sacred regardless. It's a sacred relationship, even though one is saved and the other is unsaved. Otherwise, your children would be unclean. But now they're holy. But he says, if the unbeliever leaves, let him leave. In other words, you can't force a person to stay. A brother or sister is not bound in such cases. He says that's not what should happen. That's not the ideal in terms of the will of God. But if an unbeliever said, I'm out of here, I'm out of here. Obviously, you want to do everything you can to keep the marriage together, but they say, I'm out of here. You can't fight that. God has called you to peace. For you, wife, how do you know whether you'll save your husband? And there he's not saying stick around. What he's saying is let him go. Because if you hope that you can save him, you have to make that judgment. It may not happen. Or you, husband, how do you know whether you will save your wife? You don't know. That's beyond your control. So Paul is getting very, very practical here in relationship to dealing with some of these issues that they were struggling with. Question, how does Peter's message, and this is a beautiful balance again, how does Peter's message regarding mixed marriages in his final letter give additional perspective to Paul's instructions in 1 Corinthians? And here again, you have a bigger perspective. And this is a powerful passage too. And here he's addressing wives who are in relationships with unbelieving men. And he says, wives, in the same way, submit to yourselves to your own husbands, so that even if some disobey the Christian message, that is, they're unbelievers, they've not responded to the gospel, they may be won over without a message by the way their wives live. This happens. Their life, the wife's life, is so dramatically changed that God uses that to reach her unsaved husband. Without a message, by the way their wives live. When they observe your pure, your reverent lives, you're a changed person. Your beauty should not consist of outward things like elaborate hairstyles, which they wore that were about 3 feet high and interwoven with gold. I mean, this is not talking about having a nice hairstyle. This is talking about an elaborate hairstyle that is for show only. And the wearing of gold ornaments or fine clothes. Nothing wrong with nice clothes, but he says the thing that really going to communicate to this guy is the hidden person of the heart with the imperishable quality of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is very valuable in God's eyes. And so Peter is saying, don't bail out too quickly. If he's going to go, Paul says, you got to let him go, vice versa, either way. But here Peter says, wives, don't give up too quickly, because God may be able to reach this person. Now, the fact of the matter is, he may just take advantage of it, stomp on you, rub your nose in it, and God doesn't ask you to put up with that. But don't use it as an excuse to get out until you've lived Christ and allowed Christ perhaps to reach this individual who doesn't know the Lord. So again, you have the practical balances that come here in relationship to mixed marriages.